Chris, if you want to put up the colors, we'll get this train rolling.
Will do.
Good evening, everyone. Please stand and salute the colors with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thanks for being patient. If you're with us, you're a part of the Town of Canandaigua Planning Board meeting of May 11th. Thanks for your persistence to get back in. And I'll start with the roll call, make sure everyone's here. Ryan Stachuk.
I am here.
Gary Humes.
Here.
Bob LaCourse.
I'm here.
Amanda Van Laken.
Here.
And I'm Chuck Euler. We're also joined by our recording secretary, John Robatella.
Here.
We also have Lance Brabant, our representing our town engineers MRB group.
I'm here.
And also we have our planning board attorney, Christian Nadler.
Hello, hello.
And as usual at the controls, Chris Jensen. And we're dependent on you, Chris.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
That's all right. That's all right. Okay. Let me go over procedure for those of you who may not have sit in on any of our meetings in the past. Sat in on our meeting, excuse me. We take each item on the agenda as they are listed. We then ask the applicant to make a presentation as to what their application is all about. At the end of that presentation, the board members have the opportunity to ask questions and make comments. I will then go to the audience, anyone who is on the call who would like to address the board regarding any issues and regarding that application. Then we'll go back to the board and we'll consider resolutions for the application at that time. If you'd like to speak, please get our attention by raising the hand on the Zoom prompt or somehow wave or speak up and we'll recognize you. And when recognized, please give us your name and your address and you may then proceed with your question. All that being said, let's move on to our first item, which is the privilege of the floor. And this involves anyone who happens to have something that is not on the agenda for this evening and they'd like to bring it to the board's attention. Now is the time to bring that up. And I will call on anyone who would like to get our attention and address the board. Okay. With no one acknowledging, we will move on to our agenda. The first item on the agenda is a continued public hearing for Marks Engineering and ATL Contractors representing Thomas Sawyer. He's the owner of property over on Emerson Road, and he's seeking a single stage site plan approval and a special use permit to put a service garage on that property. I will open the hearing.
They have been requested, I believe, to go to the next meeting.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do, Chris. I was going to open the meeting and then mention that they had requested because they did not get their plans and information that we requested at the last meeting in time for we put on this agenda. So I would then ask for.
I'll make a motion to continue this public hearing to the next meeting.
Okay, I have a motion to
I'll second.
continue the hearing to the 25th of May. Further discussion. Since it is a public hearing, is there anyone in the audience who tuned in tonight just to address the board regarding this application? I'd like to give you the opportunity to speak. If not, we'll take this back up on the 25th. Is there anyone? Okay, hearing no one. I have a motion, a second, to continue the discussion and hearing for Marks Engineering ATL Contractors to May 25th. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Let's move on to our new public hearing. And I should say for the record that the continuation of the previous hearing and the advertising of this new public hearing that's it's going to come up right now were both duly advertised in the Daily Messenger on May 4th in its daily publication. So both these applications have been advertised. And that being said, I'll open a public hearing for Aurora Solar, representing John Akey, owner of property out on County Route 10. And Lance, if you want to tell us what we're doing tonight, I understand that tonight is the first step in a process that has to occur regarding seeker.
Yes, good evening. So because this, the type of application is before you, and being that it's a type 1 action under seeker due to the limits of the disturbance area, the town of Canandaigua is going to be conducting a coordinated review under seeker. So tonight, obviously, you are more than welcome to do an overview of the project, get input, provide input back to the applicants and their team, and then ultimately, the action that would be taking, assuming the board's ready to move forward, would be commencing the seeker coordinated review, which is a 30-day coordinated review. The resolution that I drafted up for your consideration identifies that all comments and feedback from those agencies that have been identified as involved and interested are due Monday, June 21st. That would allow us to potentially take action on the seeker at your June 22nd board meeting. And that action would be seeker determination and then potentially rendering it a decision, again, if the board was in a position to do so. Hope I outlined it okay.
So you said June 22nd?
I believe so.
Would be the first opportunity we could take any action regarding the seeker approval and the site plan, right?
Correct. We would be doing a 30-day review. That 30 days would end June 21st. That would allow you, the board, to then on the 22nd, assuming all input has been received and you guys are ready to move forward and make your decision on the environmental record of the application, you would be able to complete the part 2, part 3, and then potentially render a decision on the application.
Okay.
You're saying, Lance, that we might only have like one day though to review the seeker information, right?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, honestly, what will happen is we'll coordinate out and the input that you would typically get back is going to be, no, I don't have any objection to the town of Canandaigua being lead agency, if they send anything at all. Now, to that extent, we're also hoping to get comments back that provide some feedback to you so that you would have that for your assistance in going through that review. And most definitely, if we don't get it, if we get it back on the 21st, a comment that says, hey, planning board, we need you to consider this as part of the review, then if you're not in a position on the 22nd to do anything with that, then you're not in a position to do anything with that.
Okay, Gary, you understand?
Yeah, I understand it. I'm just
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah, it is kind of a short fuse, but I think,
I mean, we're going to talk about it tonight, but we know there are wetlands in there. We know there are things like that. I just kind of,
So
we have to do due diligence here to make sure that we're doing everything right. And if
right.
we get
So-
comments back on 21st, I'll just say, if we get comments back that we need to really discuss and consider, I'll probably be ready to say, we're not going to be ready on the 22nd.
I guess my suggestion, Gary, what I've seen other places do and what I would suggest that we consider doing, obviously it's up to you guys, and I know your agendas have been fairly lengthy, but you would probably keep them on the June 8th agenda. That way we can continue to have dialogue about where we are in the process. By
Okay.
that point in time, you'll likely have input from MRB Group in terms of our review. You might
Okay.
have some feedback from the applicant tonight that suggests they've already reached out to Army Corps and DEC, and maybe they already got feedback from them that suggests where they are in the process. So the goal would be to try to minimize the amount of time needed, because we'll have between now and the 22nd to help do that. Now, again, if on the 22nd, you guys, the board, still feel that you don't have all the input that you need, 100% agree with you. You would continue it, provide that time and that opportunity for you guys to review and receive that input.
Yep, that's fine. Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Well, knowing the procedure and what we can and can't do tonight, I guess ultimately, if nothing else, we will vote on the declaring ourselves lead agency. And I know you have a resolution in our package to do that. But since the applicant is here and we may have some people who are neighbors who are notified of this hearing and are interested in hearing about what's going on and maybe have some comments, let us proceed at least with a presentation of the application. I think the last time we looked at this property, it was in a sketch plan form. And since then, it has gone now, evolved to the site plan stage. And Dave, I know you're here, and the representative of Aurora, I'm sorry, ma'am, I forget your name.
Hi, yeah, I'm not sure why it says Dave under my name as well. I'm Caroline Rizzo. I represent Aura Power, our US division. Glad to be here. Thanks for having us, everybody.
Okay, so Caroline or Dave, do you want to tell us about what you've done to the site since we saw it in a sketch plan form, and where you are with some of those agencies that Lance had mentioned?
Sure, so I can start with that and have Caroline supplement. So good evening, everybody. Dave Plant, Energy and Environment Practice Leader with Bergman. So yes, correct, Mr. Chairman, we were before you, I think in November or December for the sketch plan meeting for this project, 3.25 megawatt community solar project on the 17.98 acre parcel owned by Mr. Akey at 2890 County Route 10. Since the last meeting, we have obviously developed the full site plan set and have addressed a number of the comments that came up both from the planning board during that meeting, as well as various agencies and Chris, as well as the town engineer. Number one mainly was the addition of the landscaping along County Route 10 as requested. So we put a number of evergreen trees along County Route 10 north of the access road. I know there was a comment from the county about south of the access road, but there's some significant large trees already there. I think some Norway spruces that we won't plan on removing. So we would plan to keep that existing screening there. We've done a couple of shifts to the access road just to make sure that, and to the poles from the concept plan in line with some of the recommendations that we received from NYSEG, the utility, RG&E, excuse me. The other item that you brought up was some of the wetland questions. So for those of you who are familiar with the property, the Akeys utilized this property for a number of years as a horse training track. So there is basically a bermed track around the property. And there are, I guess, some either plugged culverts or some wet areas on the inside of that track that have formed as a result of that berming activity. So we show that in those blue and purple areas there that Lance is showing on the screen. Fairly low quality emergent wetlands that are under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers. So in our comment response letter that was submitted to the town, the latest one, we kind of detailed how the Corps of Engineers uses their nationwide permit 51 for land-based renewable energy projects. So, which technically states that, you know, if you have less than 1/10 of an acre of permanent wetland impacts, you're not required to submit an application or what's called as a pre-construction notification to the Corps. We are under 1/10 of an acre as shown in the site plan set. However, there are going to be some temporary impacts associated with, you know, having equipment in there to drive the posts for the panels. And so the New York State DEC has a special individual water quality certification procedure that they go through when you have over a 1/4 acre permanent and temporary impacts combined. So we will need to go to the DEC for that permit. We have initiated that process. There's a new federal law that just started this past fall that requires us to submit what's called a pre-filing meeting request to DEC. That was submitted, I think, a month and a half ago in anticipation of submitting a joint permit application to DEC for that individual water quality certification. So we are anticipating submitting that to DEC and the Corps within probably the next 2 weeks, depending on feedback from the town. so that we have the most up-to-date site plan that we can send to them with the most up-to-date impacts. We anticipate that to be a 30 to 45 day process with both of those agencies before they issue their permits. And with DEC, they cannot issue their permit until the town as the lead agency completes seeker. So I know it sounds like a bit of a chicken and an egg, but they will hold off on issuing that permit until you as the lead agency do complete seeker and, in a perfect world, issue a neg deck down the road at whichever meeting you do that. So those are the main changes currently. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Caroline, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add that I left out, but thank you for the opportunity to meet tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. At this time, you really covered it all. I think that from our last discussion, everything that has been updated, Dave was able to cover.
Okay. I'll go to the board. No, realizing that we're going to be looking at this in probably much more detail, but if you have some general questions or have some comments regarding the latest plan, if you can pass them along to Dave and Caroline at this point, I'm sure they would appreciate it.
Dave, Caroline, it's Bob, of course. A couple questions and comments. First of all, I appreciate the screening. Hopefully you're going to answer Chris's question or statement he had about in the easement of those, and hopefully they're going to stay outside the easement, but still remain. I do appreciate the 8-foot height of those trees at the planting. That's great, instead of seeing one that's 3 foot and hopefully might grow. And I did appreciate to see that you have a maintenance plan in your maintenance plan for the panels, a maintenance plan for those screening trees also. Appreciate that. I asked last time about the noise that these panels are going to make, if any, because they're going to be an active or passive movement panels. So my question is, are these passive or active? And if active, how much noise are they make when they move?
So thank you for those comments. And to touch on your first point on the water line easement, yeah, we did receive those comments from Chris and Jim Fletcher. We are addressing all the comments received from Jim, Chris, the Environmental Conservation Board, and the County Planning Board for our next submission. And I just talked to Jim yesterday, and he gave me the easement width. So we've plotted that on the plans and moved the plantings and the fencing a little closer to the panel so that we are now 30 feet back from the edge of that easement as Jim requested. So we were able to accommodate that. In terms of the plan or the panel type, they are movable moving tracker panels. I'd have to double check the spec for the decibels for that, but I know for the inverters that we have, the decibels are generally less than 69 decibels at 3 feet at 72 degrees Fahrenheit. So generally, by the time we get to the edge of the road, they are not audible, just because about 69 decibels is about the same as a vacuum cleaner. And I think the inverters are fairly we show the inverter pad at the southern end in the middle of the project site. So we're pretty far away from the road. It's going to be, and I know this is a sore subject in the town and the city, but it's going to be considerably less than the speedway that's north of the project site. But we can get you some more details on the noise specs for the tracker panels themselves.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to find out. I did a lot of research. I noticed that passive panels don't make a lot of noise. They go off of hydraulic pressure basically, but the actives are motor driven. And then I can imagine all these panels, are they all in unison, all happening at once all day long? So it is different than a racetrack because it's going to happen all the time. And there's not that many people around there, but it might be something that they are now hearing. So that was a question I had. Thank you.
Dave, I know we had some discussion at sketch plan regarding the driveway and its proximity to the property line to the, I guess that's to the southwest, I guess it is. Is that still an issue? And is that driveway, it's gravel, right?
Correct. It is a pervious gravel in accordance with DEC's accepted detail for limited use pervious gravel driveways. And so we've included that in the stormwater pollution prevention plan that's been submitted for review by MRB and the town. I don't believe, at least it hasn't come up in any of the recent emails that Chris and I have had back and forth. I believe we're in compliance with the driveway and the fencing along the southern property line. But if not, let us know. But I believe we're good.
Chris, were you okay there? Chris Jensen?
Yeah, it shows it at 10 foot now, so we're good.
Okay, yeah, I think it was less than that before. Any other thing on the driveway? I can't see the plan, read the plan, but you have that paved area coming off of County Route 10 back to the right-of-way line. So that area has to be impervious. Right there, Dave.
Yeah, the town requires the from the roadway to the property line to be paved.
Anyone else from the board?
I see that, Ryan Stachok, he sent me a private message. I think he has something.
Yeah.
Ah, Ryan.
Hey,
Hey, there he is.
so
Go ahead, Ryan.
I have a couple questions, and this is also for Chris Nadler too. I took a training in December, just before my hours were due, and right around Christmas time, and I really did a lot of solar training on through the New York State website. So I have a couple questions for Caroline and also Chris Nadler, and it refers to the New York Solar Guidebook for local government. So I took several hours of training in that, and I just, for the record, Chris Nadler, did the town of Canandaigua opt out for pilots, payments in lieu of taxes for solar projects?
Yes, the state of New York, years and years ago, enacted a law that says solar projects can get pilot agreements and certain tax exemptions. Two separate things, actually, a tax exemption, and then there are also pilot agreements available. Included in that law was a specific section that said counties and towns can opt out of this exemption. And so long as that exemption is opted out of, it won't apply in that municipality. The County of Ontario and the town of Canandaigua years ago opted out of this exemption. That was contemplated by the legislature when they passed the state law. Separately, pilot agreements are available, payment in lieu of tax agreements where the developer, the property owner, pays a lower tax rate, usually in exchange for creating jobs in the municipality or in the local area. This was presented to the town of Canandaigua Town Board, and the town board indicated that they would take it under advisement, as I recall. From a town standpoint, it's because, well, as you guys know, the town tax rate is so low, it's not going to save a significant amount of money either way. The school tax bill is what any property owner really wants the pilot agreement on, because that is a big chunk of change. It's my understanding that the school district is not interested, but I don't have any specific information on that.
So Chris, if we could,
Sure.
and so when it comes to the pilot, which is a payment, so so according to my notes on my training, there's a model pilot law, there's an agreement and a calculator through the state of New York that we could use that really helps to balance between the municipality and the contractor. So if there was a pilot, hypothetically speaking, the town would only be the pilot would only apply to the town of Canandaigua tax, which is $1.03 per mill levy. Is that correct? So the school board would have to deal with the pilot on their own. The county would have to deal with the pilot on their own. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct, Ryan, and you broke it down exactly. So, the town can grant a pilot agreement or agree to a pilot agreement separate from the school district, but that's, like you said, $1.03 per thousand.
So then my question for Caroline is then,
10 times
is,
that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Nadler, but my question for Caroline then is, and maybe Chris too, is that in the training, I learned that there's an incentive for this alternative energies
Mhm.
would be called the adder incentive, where the contractor commits X amount of energy to go to low to moderate income households. Does this project, can we not include that because of the lack of pilot? If you know what I'm talking about, go ahead.
This is through the MY Sun program, and the adder is just another element of that. At this time, Aura Power, this is our first project in New York State. We are, an experienced developer in Europe and Canada. However, this is our first project in the States, specifically New York State. So we are currently in the process of just being accepted into the MY Sun program. So at this time, much of our research has been dedicated to just going through the application process, compiling the proper documents. So we have not even gotten to the point in the process with NYSERDA and MY Sun to potentially add the adder, ask those questions. We are still very early on in that process due to some internal delays.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to know about that the next time you guys come in or whenever, just because maybe there is a trickle down economics here. If we can help low to moderate people save on their utilities and to kind of just as part of the seeker, I think that would be helpful for me to know. Certainly supportive of alternative energies and just kind of want to know more about it. So thanks. And
Great. Ryan, if you would like to just shoot me in the private chat your email, I can always send you some updates prior to the next meeting as well. Yeah, great.
Okay, anyone else from the board?
Yeah, this is Gary.
Yeah, Gary.
So I have two kind of concerns or things. One was the landscaping. I think you already addressed that. I was concerned with what Jim Fletcher had talked about being in the easement. So I'm happy that you were able to accommodate that and bring that back. The other kind of landscaping, it's not really landscaping, but kind of the issue is underneath, within the array field, the ground there, is that all just going to be seeded with grass? Is it going to be stone? Is it going to be, and how is that going to be maintained if it is grass? Is that going to be part of the maintenance agreement that somebody's going to come in the, summer months and go down between each array and mow it, or, what's going to be done there, within the array field on the ground from a, I guess you can call it landscaping perspective.
Yep, and I can address that. So in the details of the site plan set that we submitted, we included a number of seed mixes that are pollinator friendly and for the upland areas, and then for the more wet areas or areas where we have to put in stormwater swales, a rain garden mix. So we've provided those. One of the comments that did come in, I can't remember if it was the county or from Chris, but had asked us to add to the landscaping sheet where on the site we propose to use those seed mixes. So we've added that in the new site plan that we will submit before the next submission deadline, so that you can see where those seed mixes are proposed. And then, as you mentioned, Gary, yes, in the operation and maintenance plan includes provisions for how the grass will be maintained, whether it's mowed or I'm not sure, and I don't want to speak for Caroline, but some solar developers use sheep to maintain those, to keep more of an agricultural use on the property. But usually there's a regular mowing schedule every few weeks or every few months to keep that maintained.
Yeah, and to just piggyback off of what Dave just said, it is something that we are currently discussing regarding using sheep and potentially, a herding dog or something along those lines on the property. But at this time, nothing has been decided. So the current operations and maintenance plan still stands. If there are any alterations, an amended one would be submitted at the time of the next meeting. But currently, we have not made any decision based on natural, vegetation maintenance, such as a sheep or other grazing animal.
Okay, thank you. Then I guess the other thing that I'm kind of looking for, I'm curious about, is the actual the installations of the arrays themselves into the ground. You talked about pilings going in areas, and I didn't see, or maybe I didn't recognize it. I didn't really see a detail as to how the arrays are going to be. Is it a steel column that's going to be inserted into the ground? What's the spacing of that within the array field? And then particularly concerning is that installation going to be different in the wetland areas? Is it going to be closer together? Is it going to be a different type of a piling? How are we going to make sure that it's stable in those particular areas? So I was kind of looking for a detail on the actual installation into the ground, if you will, of the panel, not the panels themselves, but the structure that holds the panels.
Foundation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, typically it's really a pile driving machine or another machine that actually just pushes the post down into the ground without discharging or displacing any sediment, which is a reason why the Corps of Engineers typically doesn't consider the placement of those posts in the wetland as fill. So it's something that that we've run into on other projects. We are more conservative. We typically try to permit that as fill, just so that our client has a clean, record of permitting for the project. But the spacing does not change. The spacing will be the same based on the structural requirements of the steel and the wind load and snow load for the panels. So there's no there are no less footers or more footers in wetland versus upland. But also in terms of foundation, there is no concrete that is required for these post installations. So we're not pouring any concrete in place or prefabbing any concrete footers for any of these. They're just in the ground below the frost line.
So that's at least 3 feet or 42 inches, Dave?
Correct, 42 inches. Yep.
Okay. I don't know if you had that detail of the panel and the post. I'm not sure if it showed anything sub ground level, but go one more. There it is. And I'm not sure if that's the appropriate detail anyway, but yeah, it may be helpful as to the depth that you're driving the post.
Yeah, I think adding a detail on that on that would be helpful. And then the last detail that I think might be helpful as well, maybe not quite as serious as this one, is the equipment pad. How is that going to be structured? You've got I saw in the specs there's a couple, the inverters and things like that are there. How are they going to be arranged? How are they going to be mounted? Is it just sitting on the ground? Is it going to be a kind of a structure there that's going to hold those together? What's that all going to look like, and how is that going to be contained on that equipment pad? I was kind of looking for a detail on that as well, which I didn't see.
Yeah, we can add a detail on that. It's like you said, a concrete pad where there's basically electrical cabinets sitting and anchored to each, along the concrete pad, and we have photos and details that we can add in on the detail sheets that show that as well.
Okay, and I guess I think we talked about this last time, but because these are movable, typically we see the arrays going east to west, so they kind of face south, and this is a different. They're now kind of north to south, and then rotating, but they are all on the same plane, north to south plane. They're not. There's not an elevation. So the ones at the south are lower than the ones at the north or anything like that? They're all the same elevation?
Correct, but they are able to follow the topography of the land. So they will, if there's any undulation as shown in the topo, there's not much, but it will follow the undulation of the land. So we're not doing any grading or anything like that in order to get those panels all on the same plane. They will follow the natural topography of the land.
Okay, I think those are all the questions I had. Thank you.
I have a curious question, Dave. How does the energy or the electricity flow here? So you collect the solar energy, and it's put into a condenser or a transformer, and then eventually where's it eventually going? Is it, and how's it going? Is it going through a row of poles? Because I know in some of the other solar applications we had, it resulted in a lot of utility poles being installed, and it was something we had to be aware of and be concerned about. So how will the power flow in this case?
Sure. So you're correct. The sun will hit the panels as direct current, and then it is sent into the power inverters, which will translate it into direct current, which we use in our power lines. And as proposed, we've put in most of the utility, the power lines underground. So
Okay.
the only portion where we're above ground is the portion where the utility requires us, they require us to meet them above ground. So we show a couple of poles out close to the road. Those are the utilities poles that they will put in. And then basically the one that's closest to the interior of the property is the riser pole. So as the power will come, the power lines will come up a riser onto that pole to meet the transformer and the various other equipment to step it up to the power that's on the lines currently along County Route 10.
And in some of the other cases, the array was close to a substation. That's not the case here, or is there a substation in close proximity?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure which substation we're hooking into for this one, but correct. Yeah, we'd have to be within a certain distance of the nearest substation that has capacity to be able to take the project and the power that it creates. But we're not proposing any new substation or any upgrades at the substation where we are hooking into.
This is Ryan. I'm sorry, but Chuck, I thought that the substation was right to the south of the Westbrook solar field, just south of here.
Well, there is one down there. Whether that's the one they're going to use, don't know. I guess that's why I was asking Dave.
I believe so. Yeah, I think that's the closest and the one that the interconnection agreement is hooking us into.
So that's probably the one that's used both by the city dump site, the Westbrook site, and now it'll be this site also. Okay, assuming it has capacity, as you said, Dave. Okay. Anyone else from the board? I want to go see if there's anybody in the audience who would like to make any comments regarding this application or ask any questions. Is anyone from the general public like to speak?
If you do want to speak, just unmute yourself.
Okay. Well, if someone wants to ask questions, they'll have some more opportunities because this will continue to a subsequent meeting. And I guess with that being said, any other questions from the board before we move on? I would just say, Dave and Caroline, make sure that you've checked all the boxes regarding our requirements involving site plans that involve solar applications. I know we spent a lot of time in developing those regulations, and we will certainly, staff and the board will go over those items to make sure that all the things that need to be submitted are included in your application. And I guess we're looking at a revised plan at some time in the future. So we'll anticipate receiving that. And with that being said, I guess
I
I
have a
will.
question, Chuck.
Yes, Ryan.
So my last comments are, I just want to be consistent with the project that I commented on just to the south, is that if we could just keep the fence at a height above the ground to where small creatures can get in, not deer, but small creatures could still access underneath the fence. And I know I feel like we've run around this issue again, but it'd be awesome to not have a fence there, but I think you're required by the federal government to have a fence. So if we can make that as ecologically friendly as possible, I would be nice to see that also. Thanks.
Yes, yep, you're right. We're required to have a fence under the National Electric Code. And then the detail sheets do show that we propose a 2-inch gap off the bottom of the existing ground to allow for that wildlife passage.
Yeah, I did some research on that. I don't know if 2 inches is the standard, so I'll look into that and we'll discuss that next time. I'm pretty sure I looked at something off the East Coast and there was some research that happened there and they looked at these little wildlife openings every so often, but I think the projects before, they chose to just, I think they left a little more than 2 inches. I think that they were allowing sometimes, 4 or 5 inches. So I'm not asking for that all the way around the entire fence, just something that takes into consideration wildlife movement, because it is kind of an important corridor that heads just to the west is that wetland of the outlet, and trying to be sensitive to the creatures that utilize that area. That's all.
Okay,
Chuck,
I'm sorry, I forgot to add to the gaps between the knots of the wire are 6 by 6. So there are larger gaps, that's the gaps that are in between. Yeah, the squares. Sorry to cut you off there, Mr. Chairman.
that's all right. Someone else from the board had a comment?
yeah, this is Gary again. One other thing I just forgot to mention too. I saw a comment about the compost filter sock as a sediment control mechanism. And I'm wondering if that's all that's there. Is a silt fence going to be an additional barrier that it is placed, I guess, just outside of that sock? I think that might be a good idea. To me, it didn't look like that sock was going to have enough height to it, particularly since it's kind of back in the wetlands area, to prevent, sediment and things like that from eroding or getting out of the area.
So right now we are proposing the silt sock, and we do it typically because it limits the amount of grading or ditching, I guess, that you typically will have in ground disturbance associated with installation of traditional silt fence. I live in Farmington, and it's everywhere. Silt sock is being used everywhere here in our town, and we can certainly work with Lance and the town planning board if you'd like to see something different. But that's what we do that to keep the disturbance a little bit lower, so that we're not ditching through the entire wetland to install silt fence and ditching around the entire site and disturbing soil that we wouldn't have to otherwise.
Okay, Lance, I guess I'll kind of get your opinion on that. We can discuss that later on, but
Yeah, that's definitely something we'll be looking at. I understand exactly what Dave is mentioning. It's a permitted use by DC. It's recognized. We'll definitely take a look at the areas and we'll make comments where applicable in terms of what we would suggest in certain areas.
okay, thank you.
All right, so moving on, we will continue this hearing to a date to be determined. I guess at the earliest June 8th and the latest June 22nd, assuming all information is received by the board. So with that being said, we can take take action on the resolution. Do you want to put that up, Chris, for the designating the planning board as the lead agency?
Intent to be lead agency.
Oh, intent. Yeah,
Make a motion to approve CPN 21-010 seeker determination or the intent to act as seeker, I think, is that correct? As lead seeker agency for this project, is that appropriate?
sounds good to me.
For sure, that works. Intent to be lead agency. That's what we're doing.
Doesn't matter what you say, Ryan. It's on the resolution. I need a second.
I tried to read it. I couldn't read it there. I couldn't read it.
That's all right. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Gary.
All right. I got Ryan with a motion, Gary with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Folks, we'll see you next month.
Great, thank you. And Chris, is there a certain date you would like a response to comments and revised site plan back by before the June 8th meeting, or?
We would need it at least a week before, Lance.
So I don't dictate when it's due for the board, but my thoughts are MRB group will probably have a comment letter out this week, if not early next week. That way you guys can have that and start to respond to those comments. if there's a time frame that needs to be adhered to in order to see it on the 8th, I would still recommend, if possible, scheduling you guys to come in on the 8th so that we can start discussion of MRB's comments and any other comments received to date. Whether we have revised plans to look at that time, that's up to the town. In terms of you guys, I shouldn't say that. That's up to you guys whether or not you meet the town's criteria for getting it in for that meeting.
Okay,
Great. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
okay. So
Thank
long,
you.
Dave, Caroline.
Have a great one.
Okay, we're going to move on to a couple site plan reviews. The first one is submitted by Element Design representing Dan and Lori Hoffen, owners of property at 4853 County Route 16. And they're seeking a single stage site plan approval for the construction of a 2-car garage. Chris has got the plan up in front of us. Is someone here from Element or the owner to tell us what they intend to do out there?
Hey, everybody. My name is Brad Hall, owner operator of Element Design Build. So clients want to build a 2-car garage with storage above. It's been in front of the board before. We're here today because we had to resubmit drawings. Site plan didn't match the architecturals. I believe they do now. So hopefully you guys have what you need. Although I saw a letter from Lance, I believe, with some questions. So I'd be happy to spin through those 4 or 5 items if now is the right time.
Okay. So this is a 2-story garage. Well, it's a, I guess, built in the side of the hill. And there you go. And I guess the only question I really had was, I think on the site plan, it doesn't show a lot of detail as to the masonry work you had. It looks like in the elevation view and the perspective that you just showed, some masonry, some stone and block, and that isn't that clear from the site plan itself. Is it your intent, Brad, to install that stone array, or is it not your intent?
The boulders, you mean?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
So I think some of that will be done at the landscaping phase. See how the garage actually sits in situ, and let the clients decide. They don't want some huge wall there. Obviously, we have to hold the bank. So those landscaping details are still to be determined.
Well, it would be nice if you had determined that before tonight's meeting, but I don't know how the rest of the board feels. Is that kind of information what you want to see? Will this garage be visible from the lake, or is there so many trees between the site and the lake that you would not see the garage?
Yeah, obviously depending on the time of year. I don't know that you could see the garage beyond the house from the water.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you have
It's in
to
line,
leave the
it's
site.
in line with the house, right? I mean, it's in line with the house, so you'd have to go see it beyond the house.
Behind the house, as long as
Beyond
it's
the house, yeah.
It is. There's a pretty good grade drop. Standing in the driveway, you're looking over the top of the house.
How does the rest of the board feel as far as seeing what the proposed landscaping would be? I did see on the landscape plan that just said by others. So there was no detail as to if and what was to be done. Is that a concern, or is it something that?
This is Bob. I don't see it as a concern, and I don't think it will affect on shoreline guidelines because of how it's sitting. I looked at the property and I don't think I could see it from the water for sure. Brad, I did have a question though. I believe your key says that the house or this garage is going to be 25 feet or less, but on your, I believe it's Revit drawings there's no actual height of the building that shows the total height.
That's strange. It's usually back in the sections.
Yeah, yep, I agree. Yeah,
I'm showing, you see the note, garage roofs, garage section 2, page A 3.3. We've got 16 feet to the ridge off of average grade.
right, but that's not from the floor of the garage.
Gotcha.
Right.
So
And I tried to do the math.
that's
and what that was.
I'm trying to do it now.
Mhm.
That's some tricky math.
Yeah,
Well, Chris, when you determine the height of a structure where there's sloping topography, you do get the average grade, right? And then you go to the peak from there. Isn't that how you do
Yeah,
it? Sort of like,
We use the peak off the average finished grade. We'll take a height, 1 foot, every 1 foot around the building, average that out, and then compare that to the max building height. So they have it at 16 feet max building height.
okay, so that, didn't know that.
and that is the max for an accessory building, right?
For an accessory structure under 1,000 square feet, the max height is 16 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We did have a question that there's a garage door or a door coming off this side right here.
we eliminated that side door.
This side door.
Oh, no, I thought you were talking about the one upstairs.
So there's that side door, and then here's the grading around it.
Yeah,
Correct.
that
That
in
was,
part,
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that in part is the TBD landscaping. It's so tight in there between the driveway, that corner, that door. I don't know that we're gonna work it out well on plan. I think we're well protected through the excavation phase. I think we're gonna peel that back. We know we need some retainage. But what it really amounts to, honestly, we're uncertain. We'd like to keep it minimal, I think is my point.
Right. One of our questions was regarding that, and typically what would be required would be whatever that retainage is, it's shown on a plan, and then the detail of that retaining wall be provided so that it can get approved, and then not necessarily approved by the board ultimately, unless they want to see that, but ultimately that'd be required before issuance of a permit.
We also have questions that the second floor is labeled as a studio.
Yep.
And in the town of Canandaigua, we had asked the question, is it habitable space? It's being insulated and shown kind of on a plan, not as an accessory storage structure, but as more of a conditioned space. So that was kind of one of the questions we also wanted kind of hatched out.
Yeah, we touched on this last time. So the drawings are from New Energy Works. So outside architect. They're probably a couple years old at this point. So there's been a few iterations. After our initial meeting, when I got involved, Chris, you raised that same question. So the studio note is an old note. You seemed uncomfortable with insulation, so we've eliminated that. We've eliminated the second story door, gone to an attic access type ladder. And the second floor is just storage at this point. They want a place to park their cars. They like the look of the garage. We don't plan to insulate or condition the space. And that's about that. To change drawings is an undertaking, right? For anybody. So that's our plan.
I have a question, Brad. This is Ryan. Can you just, what do you mean about the insulation? Can you I don't understand what that meant.
The question was, from Chris, I believe, is Canandaigua says we can't have inhabitable space in an accessory structure, but my drawings here show insulation.
You mean
So
like insulation in the rafters?
Yes,
Installation in the rafters, as it's going to be heated and cooled, they would have to meet energy code. And this little detail shows this is a little person. This is a studio, that sort of thing. So from the plans, it looked like the intent was to have a habitable studio on the second floor of the building.
Oh, okay. So, but did the town, I guess I have a little, and this is just philosophically, I definitely don't ever want to encourage an applicant to not insulate if they're going to be heating a place. Like that would be.
We didn't encourage them not to insulate. We just simply wanted them to tell us whether or not it was habitable space or not.
Okay, so Brad, if you're on the record right now saying that it's not habitable space, if that's efficient, I would hate to see that we don't need. We want to encourage efficiency and utility uses. I mean, if they're going to heat the garage, I guess I would say if you would like to insulate your roof, I guess I would encourage you to do that. I think we should be encouraging those types of things.
The town never said not to insulate. It said if you're insulating it per these plans, we'd like to see mechanical ventilation. We'd like the statement to whether or not it was going to be habitable space. From looking at this plans, it reads studio. There's a person up there, that sort of thing. So we just wanted clarification.
gotcha.
Brad, can you just clarify that for the town, and then you can go ahead and go forward with this plan? Is that okay? Are you?
Yeah, for sure. I would love to insulate. Just to condition, just to wrap that bubble. It is, I will go on the record, it is not to be inhabitable space. It's only storage.
Okay, Chris, can you add that or Lance, can you add that as a condition? That we heard that today? Is that okay?
For a finding.
A finding, condition?
It's
Yeah,
in the
when we
minutes.
issue the building permit, we'll just say uninhabitable accessory structure, good to go.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'm with Ryan. I think, I mean, if you want to insulate, I don't see any problem with insulating. My God.
Great.
So, yeah, I don't have a problem there. And then to Chuck, your thing about the landscaping, you know, from a shoreline guidance perspective, I don't have any issue with this, and I don't necessarily think we need to have the landscaping, that retaining wall and the big boulders defined tonight, but it might be a good condition that we have on here that the retaining wall and those boulders, that a detail of that be added to the plans and submitted prior to, I don't know, C of O. I'm not sure what the right condition is there, what the right step is, but
Well,
if we
prior to
later
issuing-
on and just have you know, you and Lance, I'm happy with you guys saying, yep, looks good to me.
Yeah, prior to issuing a building permit, if they're going to do it, then we need to see the footers and stuff, the wall. So we'll wait for it for the building permit.
Yeah, and I think once we have foundations in and that lower level framing, I think it gets a lot easier for the client to decide what they want to do, and we'll have plenty of time before C of O to get some drawings in front of you guys and get everybody's buy-in.
Well, I think I heard Chris just said he wants to see that before you get a building permit.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, the thing is if you're building something, we want to see how you're building it. We can't issue a building permit unless you show us what you're building.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Brad,
So,
any references to by others, now's the time for the by others to step up and
gotcha.
provide the information. Yeah.
I'm
We
a
can't,
little,
we can't just keep kicking it down the road. It's gotta be definitive and shown in the plan. And that's the plan we're gonna sign. So even though it may be an exercise to change the plans, they will have to be revised and corrected to show that information.
got
And
it.
for the record, planning board, some of those concerns are highlighted in the MRB comment letter as well.
I knew they were. I know
Suspected.
they'd be there, Lance. Thanks. The only other thing, I was going to do it, but I forgot to do it. When this thing first came around last year, were there any conditions that we imposed with the approval at that time that would apply this time?
Chuck, and board, I did look. I went back to, I can't recall off the top of my head the date. I want to say 2019. I went back, I looked at the resolution, and it did not have any additional conditions above what is being considered for tonight.
Okay. I think we're getting more into the weeds tonight than we did then. So which is good, which is good. And certainly you've provided a storm drainage control, stormwater management control system that runs around the building. So that looks good. So I assume your roof drains will go into that system, right, Brad?
Yes.
Okay. We really didn't get any comments from any of the outside agencies other than MRB doing their review. And is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask questions or make a comment regarding this application? Okay, if not, we'll move on. You want to put that seeker back up?
I've got a couple questions if that's okay.
Oh, okay.
The MRB comment letter. So Lance, the first one, steep slope protection plan. I think we've got that on our site drawing.
You're right, that was more for consideration for the planning board, and I agree. I think we've addressed that.
Okay, the EAF, the short EAF part 1, I'm not familiar with that.
So you submitted that as part of your application. We just ultimately are commenting on it. It's not necessarily something that we have to take action on, but I would suggest that because it's part of your application, that just gets resubmitted with that correction that we had.
Okay.
I think the issue there was most of the items were left blank, right, Lance? If I remember seeing part
Correct.
one.
And it's possible because one, they maybe assumed the previous seeker EAF was valid, and I'm just suggesting that they redo it and redate it for this application. And even though we're not technically doing a seeker form, part 2 and part 3, because it's a requirement of the town's applications that they be completed, I'm suggesting that one be filled out.
Okay.
Anything else, Brad?
Yep, just ripping through his line items here. Existing conditions that to be provided, that's in the background of the plan we provided.
Yeah, I saw that. That was the last plan sheet. I did see that.
Okay, so we're good there?
Yes.
Okay, and then number 4, we talked about landscaping.
Yeah, that door, grading and retaining wall, whatever. You have a detail that shows it, I think, fairly well on one of the sheets in terms of what you're anticipating to occur there. We're asking that this plan, the one that's on the screen now, be updated to reflect that.
Got it. Okay. Civil and site detail sheet is missing from the plan set.
So we call it a civil and site detail sheet. Ultimately, what we're looking for is all the erosion and sediment control measures that are being proposed. They should be reflected on a plan sheet, the details of how you're going to install them, what they look like. Typically, they'll grab the DEC standards and they'll show them.
Got it.
And then I would ask that based on the conversations that you heard tonight, some of the other details of the town had asked to be shown, they also be added to the plans.
Sure thing. Thank you. Thank you for the clarity.
Is that it, Brad?
That's all for me.
Okay, very good. Well, then we can move on. Let's move to the type 2 seeker. It is a type 2 action. So I will consider this resolution along with the site plan resolution as a single motion. If someone wants, so if you want to bring the site plan up, Chris, the site plan resolution.
This is Amanda. I'll make a motion to bundle the seeker type 2 and the single stage site plan approval for CPN 21 dash, I believe it's 017 for the garage at 4853 County Road 16.
And there's 3 conditions, I believe.
It's 3. Did we add any additional?
What did Brian had brought something up?
Yeah, either on the
Ryan
conditions or
had
the
suggested,
findings.
I'm sorry, Ryan, to interrupt you. I thought Ryan's suggestion was that the applicant had identified that inhabitable space upstairs and that the findings be updated to reflect that. Did I lose you guys? Did you
No,
hear me?
no, is that
agree- I
acceptable,
agree with
Ryan? Okay, Ryan is okay with that. I am too.
And do we think the condition that the landscaping, the retaining wall, and bold the plans be, details be put on there? That's part of your letter
I
in
think it's
there
part of,
already?
yeah, it's part of Lance's letter. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, then we're all set, I think.
Okay. So your motion as stated, Amanda.
And I'll second it.
Stands. So I have a motion from Amanda and a second from Gary for both the seeker type 2 and the site plan approval for this applicant. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Good luck, Brad.
Thank you, everybody.
Good to see you.
You too.
All righty. We're now moving on to CPN 21037, an application submitted by Venezia Associates representing Greg Palmer, who owns property out at 4157 Woolhouse Road. Mr. Palmer wants to build a new home out there on his property, and a unique property it is.
Yeah, that's a-
Rocco, Anthony, someone?
Rocco's here.
Okay, Rocco, you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, so this was a subdivision Brian McCabe created probably 10 years ago. And there's a house. There was 3 lots, a big lot in the back. To the east, it goes out to 21, and then another lot that he recently built on and sold just to the kind of to the east of our driveway. And then there's other lot in the back. We want to, Mr. Palmer wants to build on that. So there's going to be a long driveway coming in. It's going to be shared for almost half of the length of it. And then it's going to break off and go up into this wooded lot that faces Woolhouse Road. Everything slopes from east to west. There's drainage ditches that carry the water back out to Woolhouse. Utilities are fed from the east of the property going back out to 21, water and electric. There's easements in place all the way out to 21. That is a town service. And then there's a septic system being proposed kind of on the south side of the house in the mid part of the woods. That's basically what we're trying to pull off here, folks.
Okay.
Yeah, we understand we got to put in a couple of driveway turnarounds.
Okay. Chris, you want to put that on the record since you
Well-
had it up there?
Well, let me just ask you about that. You said this is a lot of this is going to be a shared driveway. So do we need additional turnarounds if there are existing avenues via those other shared driveways to be able to turn vehicles in and around?
I think so, Gary, because the way you go into the other one, it's kind of askew, so it's not a good place to pull off, you know?
Okay.
I've talked to Mr. Palmer, and he's prepared to do it.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you.
Hey, Rocco, this is Bob, if I may.
Yeah,
You submitted what's called arch plans. I've never heard of them, but I saw them, looked at them. They seem to differ than this site plan, which we'll approve today or look at. But it showed a pole barn where the septic tank is going to go versus septic tank
Yeah,
Kind of wondering, and the driveway was going to be in different configuration out there.
that was the architect's stab. I mean, I would throw that out. That's not what we're asking for.
Okay.
If
Yeah, I
if
saw
you
the-
can't, if you want, I can get the architect to either pull that out of there or revise it.
No, we're gonna not approve that one. We approved this one today, but
Right.
yeah, I saw the driveway. It's
No,
already.
it's different. It's different. That was their first stab at it.
Yeah, other than that, I didn't have any other questions other than that. It looked like a pretty neat house to have out there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like my son Anthony's building up on the top of Fox Ridge.
Yeah, I saw that one, yeah.
You're gonna see a lot more of these, I think.
So other than the architectural plans not being accurate as far as the site plan, the elevation, everything else is conforming with what Mr. Palmer intends to build, Rocco?
That's correct.
Okay. So, yeah, John, just for the record, just make sure that the site plan shown with the architectural drawings is inaccurate, but the building elevations and everything are to be constructed. Okay, back to the site plan. My question was, why did they put the house so far back to the east, which created quite a bit of grading behind the house, Rocco?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty consistent a lot from, east to west and west to east. So no matter where we put it, we had that grading, but he was just trying to keep it back in the woods away from the neighbor's land and keep everything out front. I mean, it was a desire on his own to push it up the hill. And eventually he's going to buy more land for Brian, so it makes sense.
That's the property to the east?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that grading is mainly to divert water flowing down the hill towards the house.
Yeah, but if you had more of a setback, it would be less intensive. Yeah, it'd give you a little more horizontal to create it. But okay, he wants to put it in the bank, so so he has a front to back split level. Anyone else from the board? I'm just looking at my notes. So that's an existing driveway that comes onto Woolhouse.
Yeah, it's there now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually in place. They put it in.
I went by there today and it's gravel up the
Yeah,
hill a little
the
bit.
driveway's definitely in.
Yeah.
And just one other property owner will share that driveway?
They do now, yes.
Okay.
And this is Amanda. Do the property owners that are going to share the driveway, I mean, do they have a good understanding of maintenance and agreement kind of amongst themselves to, and
There is an agreement in the deed that they signed.
okay. Thank you.
It's a really
And
good point, Amanda.
That was my question, Amanda.
Yeah, we talked about this on a project that similar concept over on off of Goff Road. Chris Nadler, did you maybe I help me? Do you remember encouraging a written letter of understanding, or I don't think we required one.
We have one in place already, though.
I don't recall off the top of my head. If there is one, I'd like to see it, and, a written letter of understanding isn't gonna get you very far. If you need an easement, it needs to be recorded, but,
Sounds
I
like
don't
we're good here though, Rocco, right? We're all good. Rocco, your thoughts?
There's a letter of understanding and there's an easement in place, so I think it's covered. There's a reciprocal easement in place and then rules that go along with it that govern how they handle it.
that should cover it. Let's make that a condition to submit it and get it approved, and
Okay,
sounds perfect.
Yeah,
it is perfect.
do we need that easement to be on the drawing somewhere? It's not, it doesn't show.
It's on there.
Oh, is it?
It meets it.
Well, I don't have the library page, but I got easement called out. I can add a library page.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, that would actually be useful, Rocco. Thank you.
So that 40-foot water easement comes up to just the back of the property, up to the property line?
It comes up a private drive that Brian McCabe owns, yeah, off of 21.
And that's titled to the town?
Yeah, I don't know who the easement is titled to, but I do know there's 3 lines, one to the barn, one to the folks to the south of this lot, and then one to ours, all 1.5-inch lines. Coming about, each one about 1,500 feet in length, running parallel on the same trench.
Does the line end at that hydrant right now, and then you're extending with your service?
So what we did was we brought the easement over to include where that service, where the hydrant tap is for that service. And then there's another easement in place, a blanket easement going out to 21 from the hydrant out.
Okay, so coming in off 21, there's an existing line, I see the existing part, to a hydrant.
Yes,
Then you guys, I assume that blue line continuing is the service for Mr. Palmer, right?
that's going to service our house.
Yep. So he is off his property into the easement. So I guess the easement allows him to run his service line across other people's properties.
Correct.
Okay, you say so. Very good. Anybody else from the board have any questions? Comments? This was sent out to a lot of reviewing agencies. I don't think the ECB got back to us with anything. The town ag committee had no comments. Jim Fletcher had no comments. Fire chief had no comments. We did look at Chris Jensen's comments. Tyler Ole said he was present for the borings, but he's not received the plans for the septic system. Do you know where that stands, Rocco?
Yeah, Bill Grove is wrapping them up. He told me to have them done today, so I didn't check with them, but I believe they're done now.
Okay, our resolution has a standard condition regarding the septic system.
Yep.
Okay. No comment. We were not required to go to the county planning board, so there was no request made for that. So if that looks like we've covered it all. Does anyone in the audience like to speak regarding questions or comments regarding this application?
I think we lost most of our audience at this point.
I guess we were boring them to death. We started talking about rafters. Okay, well then we're ready to move on with the resolutions again. Since it is a type 2, I'll accept a combo for the seeker and the site plan. Someone want to make those motions?
I'll make that motion to accept Venetia Associate representing Craig Palmer at 4155 Old House Road, CPN 21-037 on a single stage site approval and a seeker resolution type 2 with, I believe, I can't remember how many comments or.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I had five conditions were offered, and then I have since added 2 for your consideration. The one first I want to go over is regarding the turnarounds and the fire code requirements. The condition that we added on here was compliant with Chris Jensen's comments, are to be addressed prior to signature. I believe that would cover the fire code unless you want me to specifically identify them. So that was one. So the new comment number 6 would be, I also asked the plans to be revised to add a date to them because there's no date, record that I can find on the plans. And then number 7 was the one that was suggested by the planning board attorney, the existing reciprocal access easement and agreement over the existing driveway for all lots is to be provided to the town for review and approval.
Copy.
Chris,
So,
are we okay with that, Chris Nadler?
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry,
So-
Bob.
yeah,
Just one
so I
more
can-
comment that the town engineer's signature doesn't need to be on the plan either.
But there was a condition, Lance, regarding the soil erosion control. We didn't really talk much about it, but I assume it's not a big issue out there, but there will be a requirement for an escrow for that. And Chris, do you
Yeah.
usually review that then as part of the building permit?
We review them in-house, issue a letter of approval. It goes to the town manager for signature and then to the town board, but we can approve anything under $10,000 in-house.
Okay.
And that is a condition of that is a suggested condition of approval number 2.
Yep. Okay. We got it covered.
Can we see the conditions, Chris, Mr. Jensen, please?
I wish we could, but I only have the seeker one.
Is there a payment for parkland on it?
Yep.
Yes. Condition number 5.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
So that's my motion with 7 conditions.
I'll second
Okay.
it.
We got a motion by Bob, second by Ryan. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? None?
We thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you, Rocco.
Thank you, folks. Have a nice evening.
Are
Right.
you taking care of the sketch plan, Rocco, before you go away?
It got pulled. I really wanted to go over it, but it got pulled.
Oh, it got pulled? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they want to do a couple, they're kind of a little in-house battling going on between the buyer and seller. So stay
Okay.
tuned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, Rocco.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess just for the record, let the minutes reflect that the applicant for CPN 21038, a sketch plan for the property on Parish Street Extension, was asked to be removed from the agenda by the applicant. I don't think we pulled it, did we? Okay. Correct, Chris, right?
No, it was pulled probably more than a week ago and we removed it from the agenda.
All right. So the record reflects that, and with that, we'll move on to approval of the minutes from the April 27th meeting.
Make
I'll
that.
make, Amanda makes motion, I'll second it. Nice
Aye.
job, John. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain, Mr. Robertella.
Thank you, Ryan, for bringing that up. We missed you.
I was sick to my stomach.
Ooh,
Yuck.
glad you didn't show up.
Yeah.
Okay, we have no referrals from town board this evening. We have no recommendations being requested by the ZBA. We have nothing to pass on to Mr. Jensen. We have no letters of credit, no letters of credit, no money to be spent. So we've got a couple extension requests. First one being CPN 20074, McFarland Johnson representing the Ontario County IDA out on Brickyard, the airport, requesting a 90-day extension. I think this is their first. Is this for the terminal or the that hangar? I think it's probably the terminal, right?
I think the terminal.
That's the first one we did, so
Yeah, that's the first one we did, and I'm
that's probably,
no,
yeah.
we did two in a row. Okay, assuming it's the terminal, no big issue.
Nope.
I guess they're hung up with getting product and getting things done like everybody else is. So I'll entertain a motion to grant them an extension
So
of 90
moved.
days. Okay, got a motion second.
A second.
Thanks, Amanda. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next one is from Venezia Associates representing Janeco and Sons out on Canandaigua Farmington Town Line Road, requesting a 90-day extension for their single stage subdivision approval. That was for that 3-lot subdivision there on that dead end street. All in favor, or let's have a motion. first.
I'll
I'll
make a
make a-
motion to.
Okay, I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, training sessions. Hopefully you saw that email that Michelle sent out regarding the New York Planning Federation's Clean Energy Info Summit that's coming up in June. Looks very interesting. I think there's 4 sessions in
Yeah, one each week, I think, something like that.
every week in June.
Yeah.
So that can, if you're not going on vacation, that's maybe something you can do.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try to attend 1 or 2 of those.
Yeah, they look good.
And
While on vacation, Gary?
no vacation.
All right, and I know John is always diligent about listing all the other training sessions available. So start chipping away, guys and gals, so we can not have to panic toward the end of the year. Anybody else have anything for the good of the board? If not, we've got the meeting May 25th. Got at least 3 now, maybe 4 applications if we extend Mark's Emerson Road project until the 25th. And I think that's all we got. And
then
we will go at least one more meeting, I guess, Zooming. And hopefully by the end of May into June, we can get things. I know Doug and staff are trying to work up a procedure whereby they can do meetings hybrid. People can attend, or they can either be virtual or in person. And that's in the works. I know they're doing it for board meetings, town board meetings. So hopefully it'll apply to the planning board at some point too. All right.
Make a motion to adjourn this meeting at 7:33 PM.
Okay.
Hey,
Got a second? Thank you very much. All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Everyone have a good evening.
Have a good
Thanks.
evening, guys.
Evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.